Hi, everyone, and today we are going to be doing one of the true crime documentary, the first one of the year. At this point, I'm not sure if I had released the Patreon announcement of what's to come, but you'll be getting that soon. If you didn't, it will be available on the main feed, and I'll also make it available on Patreon. So that is going to come, so you kind of have an idea what is coming in the next year, but this is the first one that we're going to be doing, which was promised to you before. But we're doing Tiger King. Now, if you are listening to this on the main feed, just as a reminder, what I normally do is release my coverage of the first episode only. That is what you're going to be getting on this main feed. If you want to hear more of the coverage, which I'll get into how I'm covering this, that will be available to you exclusively on patreon.com/reality tea times two. Now, in terms of how things are going to be covered, now this is a 7-episode docu-series. I'm only covering the very first season. Nothing else is being covered of the Tiger King because I don't care. I honestly never even watched the Doc Antle series that they did. I didn't care enough, to be totally honest with you. I like him at the addition of this, but the second season was the one I did watch after this, and it didn't do it for me. So this is the only thing that I'm going to be covering. It's the first season only. So that is, again, like I said, 7 episodes. So how this is going to be covered is in the first episode for obviously Patreon. That is going to be episode 1, 2, 3, and half of 4. And then next week, the second half will be available, and that will be the remaining 4th episode and the remaining 3 episodes. That is how this is being covered. Again, main feed, you're only getting the first episode. Everything else will be available only on Patreon. Anyways, let's get into this. I am going to kind of talk about like what, different things I felt the first time I watched this. Because again, this was a very popular and remember documentary during the pandemic. This was perfectly dropped into our laps at just a perfect time. And I'll kind of, go into my thoughts and what really drew me into everything with this documentary. Um, so yeah, let's just kind of get into it. So episode 1, um, we kind of hear someone kind of say, so where are we starting? From the beginning? Seems about right. We hear a prepaid phone call from a prison, and it's Joe Exotic, who we will be very much acquainted with as time goes on. And he's like, I was prepared to die in a tiger cage, but here he is, clearly in a prison cell. So we hear some news footage that says there are more wild cats in cages than there are all like the tigers in the wild, or cats, should say, in the wild in the entire world. That is depressing. Now, we all know we've been to a zoo, you know, we've been to like here in Canada. I'm not sure this what the equivalent would be anywhere else, but here in particular Ontario, we have African lion safari, right? Where it is open, but at the same time, obviously, it's closed off, right? So there is these equivalents, right? Never have I touched a big cat. Never would I want to touch a big cat, to be totally honest with you. Do I think they're absolutely adorable? 100%. But, like, especially when they're cubs. But can't imagine being in a cage when these cats need to be having, like, all of this space that they're clearly not going to have in these situations. So that's really depressing to kind of hear those statistics Now, this was obviously 5 years or 6 now, 6 years ago, but I would hope that's changed, but again, as they kind of say, they kinda touch on it a little bit at one point, but when it's mentioned, it's true the fact of once these cats, these big cats have been, you know, caged or born into captivity, you can't then release them out into the wild. They wanna know how to survive. We all watched Madagascar. Alex had no clue how to survive. You know what I mean? So it's it's very true. Like it's sad, but at the same time, it's like because they're now being born into captivity, they just would not know how to survive. So we start 5 years ago in a homestead in Florida with Eric Good with a big ass snake, y'all. He's a big ass snake. This started when he was investigating venomous snakes. Someone was trying to purchase a snake and he had a snow leopard in his trunk. So how like does this happen? Like how do you just have a snow leopard in your trunk? You know what I mean? There's caged and then there's that. So with this, we meet the main attraction, Joe Exotic, who has an adorable tiger cub who he is definitely handling. He grew his Sue from very little to so much, he says, which is like, really? But anyways, we then meet Eric. I think it's Cowie or Crowley. I might have autocorrect. Who works at the GW Zoo, which is Joe Exotic Zoo, who had no experience with animals. Now, again, I feel like when you're going to not a private zoo, privately owned zoo, you're usually hiring people who have experience with animals. I would hope, and I would think, if you're handling the animals. I feel like if you're going to be hiring people to work for your zoo and handle not just regular old animals, but dangerous animals, big cats especially. And I would like to think they have some experience with animals. That'd be nice. Then meet John Reinke. We're gonna hear a lot from him. We also then meet Rick Kirkman, who is a producer. He was very heavily involved with not just GW Zoo, but Joe Exotic, because as we will kind of hear, Joe had like a television show that started with like social media that Rick was involved in or got himself involved in. We also meet Safi, which I'm not sure of their pronouns, but just to be on the safe side, I'll refer to them as Safi. Love them. I Safi was one of my favorite people just because they're so, I don't know, like there's something about them. I I love Safi. Anyways, then we get the pleasure of hearing one of Joe's music videos. What we learn, I think one of the things that really drew me into this documentary initially was seeing this gay, cowboy looking, private zoo owner, loves to be around his big cats person who not only had that going on, but also was doing music videos, making music, which by the way, it's very Milli Vanilli in the sense of he never sang his own songs. And then also seeing him do like trying to become mayor of the town in Oklahoma that he was in. And it's just like this person is so multifaceted. He can't be real. Like that was literally one of the things that really drew me into this. So Safi tells us he would film everything, which is why we have so much footage really um prior to spoiler alert, his arrest. We'll get into that in case you don't know anything about it. Um, but this is why we have so much footage because I mean, we also had like I guess director would be the right thing to say here as well, kind of involved in creating this documentary. Probably not realizing the gem that he has on like in his hands right now. And we have that, but we have so much prior to that too, because he recorded everything. This is where we learn he had the live TV show that he would do for his followers. He had a lot of followers apparently. He would do it every night at 6 p.m. on the dot. Rick says that he wouldn't have more than 80 people watch his streams. So my question for Rick is, because as we kind of learn from him, we don't he started this off with doing streaming, and then the streaming then turned into doing this more produced television show that clearly was still being aired on his social media. And that only happened once Rick came in. So my question for Rick is, why? Like, why would you get involved with this if really and truly he's only having 80 people watching these? You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of money in producing something like this, right? Like, even just doing like a simple podcast, there's a lot of money involved. But I can imagine that is way more. That money that I would think, and we will learn as this documentary goes on, Joe didn't have. He didn't have it. So then we hear the show would have issues with animal rights people, because we're gonna start hearing from PETA. But in particular, it also had a problem with this other person who didn't work for PETA, but I can imagine she was very much closely associated with PETA. And y'all, in the words of Joe Exotic, that is Carole fucking Baskin, y'all. Anyway, she was the owner of Big Cat Rescue up in Tampa, Florida. She's very hippie. Now, listen, I'm on this side of protect animals. I don't think we should be out here touching a big cat or touching any dangerous big animal if that is something really and truly we should not be doing. You know, I don't think we should be having monkeys, you know what I mean, as pets. I don't think any of those things should be happening. Like listen, even as like a Michael Jackson fan, and I know he had animals on his estate, I don't necessarily he had a tiger too, y'all. I mean, he had a huge estate, but I don't think it was maybe appropriate for him to have these animals and maybe a huge estate, but really is it big enough for these animals? The one thing that I'll give him is that he clearly he had a tiger cub. If anyone has seen the Thriller um, album cover, you would know he definitely did a picture with a tiger cub and with his tiger cub. And I do think he gave that to a sanctuary. And same thing with Bubbles, as we know, Bubbles. I think Bubbles is still alive, actually. And gave Bubbles up to a sanctuary as well. He's living his best life right now, from what I understand. So at least he would do that. But do I think he should have owned them all? No, maybe not. Probably not. Um, and I think with this documentary, it definitely opens your eyes to that. But again, like I don't see the fascination of taking a picture with a lion or a tiger or a bear. Oh my! Like I just don't know. I don't think I would want to do that. Anyways, I don't particularly though like Carole Baskin for reasons. We'll get to it. She loves cats. She has cat statues. She won't watch the news unless it's about cats. She will end the captivity of big cats if it's the last thing she does. A big cat, she says, needs about 400 square miles of space. Definitely something that Joe Exotic is not providing. Something that I'm not even sure if Doc Angel is providing. But who knows? I think Doc Angel does have a little bit more space provided to him than Joe Exotic does, but as maybe probably still not 400 square miles for one big cat. And then we also meet Howard Baskin, who is Carole's husband. We see pictures of her as a child holding cats. She says, I'm actually allergic to cats, which is why her home, there's no carpeting, there's no nothing, there's all like tile or wood flooring, so that obviously she can clean behind the cats. My question to her, Miss Baskin, is yes, you're around these animals, and yes, you may pick up on shedding and whatnot. But if you are having a hands-off approach with your animals, and you're really truly your only interaction with these cats is feeding them, really, how are you getting cat fur on you? I'm just curious. Like, did she have cats in her like actual like cats, not big cats, in her home? Because then that would explain everything. But, I don't recall seeing cats in her home, but I could be very wrong. Anyways, she said everything in her house has cat print, which is actually cheetah print, but anyways. Every clothing she owns is cat print or cheetah. Her luggage is cat print or cheetah. Um, Back with Joe for a little bit. We're in his gift shop that he has, which is, listen, the saddest gift shop I've ever seen in my entire life. But he's going through the different things that he has in his gift shop. That's like, he has GW underwear. Y'all, he sells lube. Listen, do you make the lube? I have questions. I really do. Like, first of all, do you make the underwear? But see, we maybe look past the underwear. The lube, do you make it? Is it in-house? Is it FDA approved? Is it do you buy lube off of a shelf and relabel it? Like, I'm trying to understand where the lube came from and where you found the money to make said lube. And when you made the lube, I'm saying lube way too much, but if you made it, wha- is it safe? Like, I'm not going to walk into a zoo, especially, or really any establishment besides a drugstore. I'm not going to walk into an establishment or a sex shop, but I'm not going to walk into um, an establishment like a zoo, go into the gift shop and think, you know what's going to be a great purchase? Lubricant. That is going to be an amazing purchase. Let me go buy some lubricant when you know this price of it is definitely increased because of reasons. But that's the last thing I'm thinking of. Usually, we walk into a guy's shop, I'm thinking, yeah, maybe a shirt or even maybe a sweatshirt or something like that. Underwear is a little much, but fine. Maybe I can find like a stuffed tiger or lion or something like that. I am not thinking I'm going to walk in there and buy lube. I'm just not. That's weird. But he has that. He has DVDs with his music and his music videos. Yes, y'all, he makes music videos. Again, the production value is insane. We see this one song, a song that played in my head constantly for weeks after watching this documentary initially. One that I completely erased from my mind after that and never thought of again. And then the song played, and I'm like, shit, it's gonna be stuck in my head for weeks now. But he literally has a song that says, and I repeat, I saw a tiger and a tiger saw a man. It's so bad. It's so bad. Like, did he make, like, actually write these lyrics? Taylor Swift could never. You know what I mean? Anyway, we meet his husband. His name is John. He met Joe when he was 18, I believe. I think I got that right. So, young, because I think at this time, Joe Exotic would have been in his 50s, maybe late 40s, maybe at this time. Joe always knew that he was gay. This sad. That is a little sad. So yeah, he said he always knew he was gay. His dad made him promise to never attend his funeral. And I think that is so freaking horrible. So because your son is gay, and I get it, it's the 80s, but because your son is gay, you're literally like, nah, I'm good. Don't attend my funeral. And listen, you're dead anyways. What difference does it make whether he attends your funeral or not? You know what I mean? You're gonna be none the wiser. You're dead. You can't stop him from going, Funeral is meant for the people who were left behind to grieve, to say goodbye. And you're literally telling your son, you can't do that. You're gonna rob him of that. Fuck that. I don't like that. Um, so he basically says, I don't know if necessarily in correlation with this conversation he had with his father or just not being accepted in general, he actually tried to run himself off of the road. And in the process of doing that, he broke his back. And he says that he grew a love for tigers at some point during this journey, sometime in the 90s, which is why he wanted to get and own big cats. But the activists won't let him do it. Anyways, then we learn, this is when we start to learn a little bit about Doc Antle. Now, I'm probably not going to refer to him as Doc Antle every time, but if I refer to him as Doc, that's Doc Antle. This man is so established. He's actually one of the most popular or well-known animal owners or whatever you want to call them ever. So much so that he actually supplied animals for movies. I'm going to go through some of these movies a little bit of what he kind of did. One always stuck out to me, and I'll wait and say it then. He said that he did shows, and we see him actually coming in on an elephant at one like in this documentary. So I mean, not only does this man own big cats, and he does own other animals, but he also owns one of the largest animals, and that's a freaking elephant. I want to know how many square footage, Carol, does an elephant need? You know what I mean? Anyways, Joe wanted to be just like Doc. So much that he sent his employees to his facilities so that we could figure out how to do it just like him. More on that later. Doc and Joe say that we do this to show people the wildlife in the jungles, for conservation efforts. Really? Because here's the thing, I don't believe that for a second. I think there are people who were selfish, wanted to own these animals that maybe they shouldn't be owning, and make a profit off of them. Where are you doing your conservation efforts? Like, you say you're doing this for those reasons. Are you donating anything to back to wildlife? Because I doubt it. Maybe Doc Antle potentially could have, because I think he does make and was making more money from his business than Joe probably ever did. So maybe he could have, but I doubt it. We'll get to it in episode 2. Not as fun. Sorry, guys, for the main feed. But, yeah, for Joe, I doubt it. I doubt he had the financial, space to ever donate. So, someone asked Doc Antle, like, "So how much money do you charge for people to come and do, like, these tours or, you know, whatever, see the animals? Like, how much do you charge?" He says, "Minimum's $400 for probably the cheapest tour you could ever think of the grounds and to see the animals." He says, "Some tours actually can go up to $700. That's too much fucking money." Like, the fuck? No, thank you. Anyways, Joe can spend close to $250,000 to just feed the lions. And he doesn't have just lions either, y'all, or tigers. He does, I think I saw another animal that was definitely not a big cat, but he does have other animals. So, $250,000 to just feed these animals. And I'm not gonna lie to you here. One of the animals, when we see them feeding them, looks emaciated. They look emaciated. And I'm like, are we sure we're feeding these animals? Because that one doesn't look fed. That one looks like, I don't know, one of those. There's definitely a skinny lion in Lion King. Scar is pretty skinny. Not gonna lie, Scar is pretty skinny. Yeah, he's pretty skinny. We're gonna say Scar. So, like, yeah, it's the weirdest thing because I don't think he's feeding these, or he wasn't feeding these animals. He says that though they will do what they can to lower that price. More on that again later in the second episode. Some people will call to say, I got a dead cow. I can give you a dead carcass. So they'll take the dead carcass. But he says, in order for me to feed these animals on dead carcasses that are coming to me for free, basically, or maybe not free, I don't know. He didn't really clarify that. He says he would need like 30 cows a day to feed these animals. Joe says this is also my brother's dream, owning this GW zoo. And we get a little bit of a backstory of his brother. His brother apparently was going to go pick up his sister, and he said he only made it 40 miles and got hit by a drunk driver and died. That's really sad. Really, really sad. Joe would go talk to students about drinking and drugs by, talking about his brother. He would give back to the community, kind of like for Canadians, we used to do VIP course, which basically, I can't remember what it stood for. Um, but it's basically like a program where we talked about, drinking and driving and drugs and other stuff. It was a course that we did back in the day. I don't know how it works now, but if they even do it now, but back in the day, it was grade 6 in Canada, or at least in Ontario. So it's kind of like that. You kind of do. But he says, doing that didn't work because you're dealing with kids who have very limited attention span. He's like, okay, so let's add some animals to the bit. So, can kind of draw them in. It was a little bit better, it was received a little bit better, but now that's a magic and the animals to make it just a little bit more Shazam, you know? So he would do that. Then it moved to mall tours to do cub petting. So this good thing that I personally think he was doing to keep the kids safe in the future turned into a money-making scheme instead. Carol and Howard actually hired this lady named Susan to get to go to the malls to stop him from going to the malls to do this cub petting thing. And it would work for some, I'm sure, which ultimately became a financial hit to everyone. But they say, Joe would figure it out. He would figure it out. How? Because if he's going to malls that are then like, you know what? No thanks. How's that working out? Apparently, tiger selfies became a huge thing on dating apps, which I don't know why, but my algorithm was a little different. You know what I mean? Anyway, even Shaquille O'Neal went to the GW Zoo in order to see, Shaquille O'Neal. Listen, Shaquille. Yikes. I don't like that. That's not a cool look, but it's fine. You didn't understand it, so it's okay. We get a bit on Dog Antle, and it appears that he potentially joined a cult. Uh-huh. Definitely looked like he joined a cult, which kind of got him into all of this. Definitely looked like he definitely joined a cult. Hold on to that for the second episode, because we're gonna get a little bit more to maybe he started his own sect. We'll get to it. Um, this is where we learn about the movies that Doc Antle was involved in providing his animals to these movies. Mighty Joe Young, loved that movie. That was a great movie. Great movie. Are we saying that Mighty Joe was his gorilla? I just have questions. So yeah, he would do that. Dr. Doodle. Listen. We all love Dr. Doodle. We all do. Yikes. And my personal favorite, because I am always going to be a Jim Carrey fan, Ace Ventura. Those were his animals in Ace Ventura. I love Ace Ventura because I love Jim Carrey, like I said. But yikes. So people would take pictures with their babies and the cubs, and I'm thinking, why in the Lord Jesus would you want to do that? Why would you risk taking a picture with your child and a dangerous animal that is unpredictable, or is it going to at least do what they're going to do? Because a tiger's going to tiger, a lion's going to lion. They don't know any different. They could be looking at your child thinking, ooh, food. You know what I mean? And you're going to put your child they were cubs, mind you, but you're going to put your child beside a cub. Tell me how y'all that makes sense. Anyway, Carole says, we have a tiger crisis in this country because y'all want to take pictures with a tiger and a lion. Like, what's wrong with you? Anyway, we learn about the situation that happened. I wrote Gainesville, but it might have been a different place. That sounds like Gainesville. A person I think they owned big cats, but nonetheless dangerous animals. He deliberately set loose his dangerous animals for whatever reason I do not know. I don't. But ultimately, police would have been out there trying to protect people, capture these animals, and in the process of doing that, they had to kill 48 animals that were set loose. Now, I don't know if this was that person's intention to have these animals killed. I don't know if this person's intention was having other people killed by these animals. But, that's really fucked up. Joe says on national TV, mind you, that if people take my animals, it will be a small Waco. Y'all, one day I will do the documentary that was on Netflix about Waco. But for those people who do not know, the whole situation with I keep for some reason saying People Simple in my head, but that is not it. What's the freaking name of the cult? It's not coming to me. Anyways, we know what happened in Waco with the ATF agents and the whole bit. that is basically what happened, is that, this cult, had a standoff with ATF. They were tipped off, mind you, and, it was a horrible situation. People lost their lives. The home that they were in was set on fire, like, it was not great. And this is what this person is saying would happen, that I'm going to what? Kill police in order to protect my animals or not have them taken away, or I'm gonna set them on fire? Like, that's really fucked up. Really. So, yeah, so that's what he said. The last thing you want, folks, is a real life tornado when you got tigers. I would imagine. Can you imagine? Like, you're just sitting there minding your own business, and all of a sudden you start hearing the tornado warning, and all of a sudden you see said tornado because we saw the footage of a tornado in the distance. It had touched down. We see it. The last thing that you want to deal with is having animals that are just going to be like, all of a sudden just up in the air, spinning around and then landing where they land. What if they don't die? Then you just have this animal that can kill you just out there in the open and thinking this isn't GW Zoo anymore. You know what I mean? Anyways, so GW Zoo is basically his own little town, someone says, like, which apparently when you can buy the lube there, like, what? Anyways, Joe basically says that he is mayor, and more importantly, y'all, he's executioner. Now, is he executioner of those people who decide to take his animals, or is he executioner of his animals? More on that later, too. Second episode, sorry. John Reinke says him and Joe basically had a suicide pact that if anyone in here tried to take the animals, they're just going to kill themselves. That is some fucked up shit. That is some fucked up shit. Why? Then we learn from this person named Brittany. She's with PETA. They have been after Joe for years. Okay, years to get him. Eric is like, those people fucking scare me. Listen, ain't no one more passionate than PETA. Like, seriously. Someone basically asking me with the documentarian basically says, like, why do you carry guns, Joe? Like, why? He's like, people. He carries the guns for the people, to hurt the people. And they ask him, so not the cats? Because, hello, cats. He says, no, I will shoot you before I shot my cats. Listen, like I said, there's no one quite passionate like PETA. In my honest opinion, there's nothing more scary than a animal owner, really and truly, because they will shoot you. They will hurt you. They will attack you before they ever did anything to their own animals. Like, people who are this passionate. Seriously. PETA would have people go into the zoo to investigate Joe and would file police reports. We actually see an example of someone doing exactly that. Joe says, listen, Carole is a hypocrite. She was open to the public, and we see it later on. She is open to the public, but more on that in a little bit. Rick is like, Carole is just as bad as Joe. She was making money off cats as well. More on that. Then Joe and Carole started bashing each other, like they're coming at each other, especially Joe, like he's really coming for her. Carole was working on having Big Cat Safety Act, I think that's what it's called, which, if passed, would shut down people like Joe and Doc Antle, which would be so bad for them. Joe's like, we see him basically doing this weird shit, and he's like, happy birthday, Carole. here's snakes in your mailbox. And he literally did put snakes in her mailbox, or got snakes put in her mailbox. And she opened her mailbox and she's like, the fuck? Now, the only thing, if he never said that on a platform, we'd be none the wiser. She may think it's him, but it's Florida. I'm sure it's not unusual to have a snake in your mailbox, you know what I mean? Anyway, then he has another bright idea to get a Carole dummy that he shoots at multiple times. That is some weird shit, personally. And then 4 years later, we're coming back into the present. Well, the present back then. We hear this prepaid phone call again from prison from Joe Exotic. And you're just kind of in this moment. This was the end of episode 1. In this moment, you're just like, how is this man in prison, and why is this man in prison? And this is when I'm like, I'm open. I'm open to this idea. I want to see what happens with this documentary. And that's where we ended, like I said, episode 1. For the main feed, that is all you're getting from me. If you want to hear more of this coverage, you can head on over to Patreon, where you will hear all of this.